Hello there, I'm Gloria Makarenko. Well, COVID may have made this November different than any other, but a lot of people are still finding new ways to keep on keeping on. This is Our Vancouver. Coming up, how one of Vancouver's original catering companies is adapting to the pandemic to survive and thrive. And while COVID has put handshakes on hold, we're going to look at the history and possibly the future of the friendly gesture. But first, can an old dog teach us all something about aging?
Best thing about these socks is not only do they prevent Henry's paws from getting frostbite on the ice, they're also non-skid. Whoa, I could use some of these myself.
Well, that is part of a short animated film called Old Dog, and it's streaming online from the National Film Board. Well, the writer and director is Anne-Marie Fleming, a filmmaker in Vancouver, and the inspiration for this film comes from a different Anne-Marie Fleming, the CEO of Dog Quality in 100 Mile House, which makes wheelchairs and other aids for aging dogs. Anne-Marie and Anne-Marie, hello to you both.
Hi.
Hello.
Now, filmmaker Anne-Marie, let's start with you. How did you hear about the work of Anne-Marie from the Caribou?
Well, Anne-Marie and I have been getting confused for each other online for many years, and I think it was quite a while ago. She was a successful participant on Dragon's Den, and friends of mine would come up to me and congratulate me for winning, and these are people who watched it and who know me. And so I was quite confused. And, just last year, I guess Anne-Marie was doing something with wheelchair technology for dogs and got a little bit of press. And somebody, a friend of my parents, sent the article in a local paper to my mother. And my mom called me up and said, "Oh, so you're making wheelchairs for dogs now?" And I said, "No, I make films." And so, and we were mixed up online, even before all of this. And so I went to Anne-Marie's site, Dog Quality, which has the same, I have dog in my website too, Sleepy Dog Films. And I saw this blog of her talking about caring for old dogs. And she thought that she was her best self when she was caring for others. And this really resonated with me. And, my parents are older, and my father has every problem under the sun. And I thought this would be such a lovely idea for a film to talk about caring, and how it's not that, people who love their dogs are too caring of their dogs, is that we could all learn a lesson from this and be more caring and compassionate to each other. So I called her up and asked her, what she thought, but that she inspired me, and I just wanted to let her know and to thank her for her work. Yay!
Yay! Well, yay! Well, it's a wonderful collaboration. So Anne-Marie from the Caribou, and I love that description of your best self when you're caring for others. That's lovely. But how did you get into this? Getting these specially adapted things for aging dog. Diapers, strollers, that type of thing.
Well, if you had asked me, years ago, would I be involved in this, I probably would have chuckled a little bit. But what happened was my own dogs, they grew up and they entered their senior years and they started to struggle. And when I looked around for ways to make their life easier, I just was thoroughly disappointed in the lack of products that could really make a difference. And so Dog Quality was really born out of wanting to help my own seniors at the time.
Okay, and what did you make when filmmaker Anne-Marie pitched, making a short film inspired by your work?
I was blown away by it. As my counterpart explained, it's been a relationship that's gone on for years, though we had never met. So her reaching out was really exciting and a great validation of sort of our mission, which is to make this time of a senior dog's life as happy and joyful as possible. Because oftentimes they just need a little help. Their spirit is willing, their mind is willing, but their bodies are betraying them. And there's so many ways that we can help them enjoy life to the fullest. And so the fact that she wanted to parallel the way that we age as people with the way that dogs age and show it in a light where there is still happiness and joy, it was something I immediately wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, and it does have happiness and joy. There's a poignancy to it for sure, but it does leave you ultimately feeling like, yeah, this is kind of how life goes. Anyway, so filmmaker Anne-Marie, what was that in your mind that just said, no, this isn't just an aging dog story. This is about all of us.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, when I saw what Anne-Marie was doing, as we see our friends, ourselves, our parents age, there's such a heaviness to it, such a sadness of what's lost. And dogs are just the ultimate, Zen masters, that they live in the present, and they're just so accepting. And then you have what Anne-Marie's making, like, oh, incontinence, put on a pink diaper, missing a leg. Let's get a wheelchair going here, and I know that sounds flippant, but I thought it was so great to be able to see this kind of joy that you could impart to, what we often see as a negative. A friend of mine who actually, he's a filmmaker, Jason De Silva, and he works with people who have MS. He has MS. He does advocacy work for MS. He said that mobility, or what is the word I'm looking for? Sorry. Ableness. Like it is a short time in our lives. Some of us have it for longer than others, but there will be a time when you need help from others, and that's just part of life, and we should embrace it.
Yeah, 2 legs or 4 legs. Everybody needs a little help at some point. So Anne-Marie and the Caribou, what's this all been like? What are you taking from having worked on this project together?
Well, it was a great opportunity to, I think, really communicate an important message. We've talked about it already, about perspective, and how it's really how you approach the challenges that aging brings. And so this opportunity to share that message, and I think will open minds in a new way for people that see not just the similarities between people and dogs, but just how having an open mind can make an impact on your life. And so being able to share what Dog Quality is doing, but also being able to spend a day with AMF, with my own seniors, so she could see firsthand how they approach the challenges and how these products have made such a difference in their lives. All of that was a really wonderful experience for me, and to understand how these films come about, and sending footage so that she could get an understanding of some of the challenges like firsthand. So some of the things in the film, like urinating in the house or bumping into walls, those are based on real life events with some of my dogs, and so it was just great to sort of know from behind the scenes how films like this come about. But it was also really special because I think the message is so important.
Well, Anne-Marie Fleming and Anne-Marie Fleming, congratulations to you both. You managed to just fit so much into a few minutes of film. It's really, really beautiful. So I hope people do check it out on the National Film Board site. Thank you so much to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, this is Benji from Vancouver Studio Glass, and this is our Vancouver.
All right, it's time for one of our favorite features. This is when we get to showcase a number of the photographs that you have sent us. Let's start with this one from David Beck. He captured this varied thrush perched on a cherry tree just as it started snowing in Clearwater. That is just wonderful. Thank you. Bruce Gartrell sent us this photograph from Munson Mountain in Penticton, where he says people can sit and enjoy the view and try to forget about their troubles. It's also where his dad proposed to his mother more than 80 years ago. I can imagine the inspiration there. And finally, Bahari Sinaki sent this photograph of these whiskey jack birds clamped onto her trekking poles on Mount Seymour. I guess you're going to be taking a little bit of a break for a while. So thank you so much. We encourage you to send us more. It's easy. Just email your photographs to us at bcphotos@cbc.ca. All one word, bcphotos@cbc.ca. Coming up, Johanna Wagstaff gives Jellyfish the kudos they deserve for storing the equivalent of Canada's annual CO2 emissions.
Long considered a nuisance and a symbol of collapsing ecosystems, jellyfish can sometimes get a bad rap, especially if you've ever been stung by one. But a new study proves these gelatinous sea creatures actually play a valuable role in ocean ecosystems, and an even more valuable role in carbon storage, much more than scientists previously thought. In fact, at any given moment, about 510 million metric tons of carbon are stored away in these creatures, a number roughly equivalent to Canada's total carbon dioxide emissions in 2018. Okay, so first of all, jellyfish store carbon? Well, you're not alone if that concept sounds new to you. I spoke to Eugenie Jacobson, a biological oceanographer from UBC, about this process.
They use zooplankton as a food source, and zooplankton use phytoplankton as a food source. So when phytoplankton take up that carbon dioxide and convert it to carbohydrates that are used for energy, the zooplankton get that organic carbon, the jellyfish get that organic carbon. So it's kind of like a weird domino effect. And then the jellyfish sink to the bottom of the sea floor. And once it gets into the sediment, it can be locked in there for millions of years, which is a really efficient way of storing carbon.
The scientists in this study used the Jellyfish Database Initiative, an open source data set that includes information about jellyfish distribution, population fluctuations, and physiology to estimate total jellyfish biomass around the globe. Properly taken into account, jelly-based carbon sources could increase our estimates of the efficiency of the ocean's biological carbon pump.
So this is a simplistic version of the biological pump, but the most important part is understanding that jellyfish sink quickly. So that's what really helps in terms of the carbon export, and that's what the study is saying, that they've underestimated the role of jellyfish in that way and how much they actually help draw down that carbon from our atmosphere and then onto the seafloor.
And that'll be important in understanding not only how jellyfish will be affected by climate change, but in turn, how they will influence the transfer of carbon into the world's oceans from the atmosphere. So yes, jellyfish are very valuable. And now you're Science Smart. If you have a science question on your mind, send me a tweet and I'll try to get it answered.
Johanna, thank you very much, and welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, it's no secret that the COVID-19 pandemic has been tough, especially for young people who may have seen their job prospects vanish this year. But as Andrea Ross reports, some young entrepreneurs are creating their own opportunities by turning their hobbies into businesses.
I love the chocolate chip walnut. We do a lot of fun different flavors, but we have that on the menu because it's my absolute favorite.
These siblings are finding a way to make a tough year a little bit sweeter. 8 months ago, starting a cookie company was not on their radar.
I was graduating university and I had a job lined up, but because of COVID, they were no longer hiring, and as most companies were. And my brother was graduating high school and he had a part-time job at a local pie shop, and they let him go because of COVID as well.
So they did what a lot of us did.
When life gives you bad times in quarantine, you just bake away.
Turns out they were pretty good at it. They started selling flavors like s'mores, birthday cake, and matcha latte just to friends and family, with a modest goal to sell $1,000 in 6 months.
I think it was 6 days we hit that $1,000 goal in cookie sales. So we were like, I think we need to set better goals for ourselves at that point.
Now they've sold about 10,000 cookies, a business that never would have happened if the pandemic didn't force them to change course.
I would have gone the safety route of getting a 9-to-5 corporate job. I wouldn't get to work with my best friend every day.
The kind of ambition that makes a parent proud.
They have been hard workers in the world, little kids, so I'm so lucky and so proud of them.
They aren't the only young people paving their way in a tough job market. These recent high school graduates made a website that can tell you the quietest time to go grocery shopping.
I live with my grandparents and they're part of a vulnerable age bracket, so obviously grocery shopping comes with a certain level of anxiety.
The website shows grocery stores across the Lower Mainland and Victoria, as well as parts of the U.S.
To date, we've had over 100,000 users so far.
The crafty coders wanted to help ease some anxiety.
I guess we just wanted to help during the pandemic because this is a really challenging time for everyone.
And stand out from the crowd.
Developed a lot from just being high school students into becoming software developers or even young entrepreneurs.
Gaining valuable experience for whatever comes next. Andrea Ross, CBC News, Vancouver.
This is our Vancouver.
You know, many business owners have had to adapt to survive during the pandemic, and that is definitely the case for one of Vancouver's first catering companies. Susan Mendelson is the owner of the Lazy Gourmet. And Susan, we're so glad to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thanks, Gloria. Yeah, no, it's an exciting time, despite the fact that it's a really challenging time. But we're about to celebrate our 42nd Christmas season. So we've had a lot of pivots and a lot of reinventing ourselves over the last 41 years.
Okay,
and this is another one.
The general effect, we've seen restaurants close and now, reopen slowly. But just give us an idea of the impact on your catering company.
Well, I would say at the beginning, our catering was down about 95% at the very beginning. And we were pretty well closed shop. I came back from a holiday and I said to our general manager, Kevin Mazzoni, what's happening? He said, we're closed down. I said, well, what do you mean closed down? He said, we don't have one event on the books. And I said, well, how long do you think this will last? He said, well, I think it could last for a couple of weeks. And I said, oh my God, how are we going to do it? And that was 8 months ago or 7.5 months ago. So we just really had to get together as a team. My senior team here, everybody's been here at least 10 years. We all know each other really well, and we work together as a team, and everybody's really creative. So they've come up with some pretty great pivots to try to keep us alive and keep us going through the whole pandemic.
Well, you've got some intriguing things laid out there in front of you. So why don't you give us an idea on just how you have adapted?
Sure. Well, the first thing we did is we had a big meeting to say what is going to happen with the galas for all of the nonprofit organizations over the course of the fall, and how can we help them and help ourselves all at the same time. So we contacted a number of the different agencies and organizations and said, how can we help you and create something really exciting? And we called it a gala in a box. And we do bespoke boxes, meaning for each of the different organizations, we create something that's in their price point or in their imagination of what is the most exciting thing they could do, so that on the night of the gala, people receive these gorgeous boxes. They open them up, and in dinner for two, or grazing station for two, desserts. This was one of my favorite ones, so we redid it for you for today. We can do wine in the box. We can do cocktails in the box. And then at the same time, we do something just a little bit different for everybody, so that everybody has something unique. If people are going to different galas, they don't want to have the same event.
Well, I love that idea, and that's the whole point. If you're not physically going to the gala, in essence, you're turning on your television or your computer, and this helps to have the gala experience at home, something still special delivered by you. That's beautiful. Yeah,
it's been really, really exciting. As you can imagine, we've had to have dozens of trucks driving all around the city because everybody has to get theirs delivered within a 48-hour period at the very least. So at the very most, I mean, sorry.
Okay. Well,
anyway,
when we talk about connecting online and that type of thing, where do cooking classes come into it, Susan?
So this is a really big, important part of what we're doing in terms of our pivot. So we are doing Zoom cooking classes, and we're doing them as events for corporations to keep people connected. And in fact, for a number of the corporations, we're sending boxes of ingredients across the country, boxes this size that you saw before with all the ingredients, and sending them from sea to shining sea. And people open up the boxes. They meet either in small groups or on their own, and then they turn on at the specific time, whatever their their Zoom or their platform, whatever it might be, and then our chef is there showing them how to put it together, and it's as if they're in a cooking class, and it's a great builder of like relationships for the corporations. And now we've decided to do that for Christmas as well, so that families across the country can have a fun event together, and we can create a whole whatever they want, like a dinner party for them or a cocktail party. And we're doing these beautiful cocktails, bespoke cocktails for different people as well. And they'll all get together and they'll see each other on Zoom or, as I said, whatever platform they have, and then they'll eat a meal together.
Wow, it's the whole package. I can see that. So what have you got laid out? What would be an example of something people can make with you at home?
I'd love to show you. This is one of my favorites. This is banana leaf, and I love the banana leaf because it's very flexible and very fragrant. So we make just a very simple jasmine rice. We'll give instructions on how to make it, but it's really very simple. And we just place it in the center, very center of the banana leaf. And then we have a piece of cod that we've been marinating in my miso glaze. And it's a wonderful way to keep it. I call it a way to keep the fish fragrant and also moist. It's one of these very forgiving fishes that you can have so that it's always moist and always fragrant. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to take my gloves off to do this because they're now a little bit messy. Then we're going to fold it up, and it's going to bake inside the banana leaf. And so it's the rice will be infused both with the miso and the fish as well as the banana leaf. And we're just going to take this and put it into the oven and cook away. And then, there we go. Did you get that?
I got it.
Then we're going to serve that. We're going to serve that with a kale Caesar. And we'll give the ingredients for a kale Caesar. But the important thing with the kale, and I'm sure most people know, but everybody has to know, is you have to massage your kale. Otherwise, you're not going to digest it as well. You're not going to enjoy it as much. But to me, there's nothing more delicious than a really well-massaged kale salad. So we've got the kale, we've got a bit of romaine in there, we've got our croutons, we've got our Parmesan, and then we're just going to add our own dressing, and we'll have a recipe for that. And then we're just going to toss it all together, and we've got our salad done. And
that is beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite salads, and it's so simple, and it's always great to have kale ready because you just feel holier than thou when you eat it. You just feel like, I can eat anything else. I can eat all those desserts after I eat all this kale. So we've got this ready, and then I think that fish, by the magic of television, is going to be ready. So I'm going to open the other oven.
How long generally does it cook?
Very good question. I'm going to say it's going to cook about 15 to 18 minutes.
I see.
But I use a thermopan. So 142 to 145, you just poke the fish. And if you want perfect fish every time, you cook it to the exact temperature that it should be. So that's my tip of the day. And any obviously thermometer, but the thermopan is an Instaprint, so Insta time. So then we're going to have the fish. I'm going to open it up so that you can see it. Steaming.
Do you eat the banana leaf, or is that just
that's just for
decoration
its fragrance.
and the fragrance to cook it? Okay.
That's just for the fragrance. Then we're going to serve that just on the side, just because you want it to look pretty on the plate. We're going to do a little bit of pineapple salsa with that. And this was a dinner that we did for someone else, which we did with a gorgeous mango salad with red pepper and purple onions.
Look at those colors. They're just jumping out of the screen. Gorgeous.
Just stunning. Great, great. So we're going to do that. And we're going to serve that with the Caesar. Sorry to see the back of the bowl there. Okay, so I made a little bit of a mess, My people My people are the pros around here.
You're also conscious of the clock ticking as well. But Susan Mendelson, I've got to say, you are inspiring. And I'm just thinking about what you've brought to this city over 40 plus years of catering and hosting these fancy events. And it's really, again, inspiring to see how you have managed to pivot and just take it somewhere else. So thank you very much for
Thanks, Gloria. I appreciate that.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard the SS Lazy Gourmet.
A lot of big events have been canceled or gone online since the pandemic hit. Two Vancouver dancers, Jenna Berlin and Adrian DeLieu, are going to be sharing and discussing works in progress through an informal studio showing on Zoom. The Dance Center calls this 12 Minutes Max, and it takes place Tuesday, November 10th at 6 in the evening. Now, registration is free, but donations will be accepted. So for more information, go to thedancecenter.ca. Corleone is going to be looking back in more ways than one. Remembrance with Corleone is going to stream on YouTube this year, featuring choral highlights of past Remembrance Day performances recorded in Vancouver's finest venues. The hour-long concert is going to start streaming November 10th at 7 p.m. It's free, but donations will be accepted. So for more information, go to corleone.org.
Hey, I'm Grant Lawrence from CBC Music, here to let you in on some beautiful tunes being made in the far, far north of our country, beyond the Arctic Circle, in fact. From Igloolik, the same small island in the Northwest Passage that brought you Inuit hard rock legends Northern Haze, comes this hunter, father, husband, and self-taught singer-songwriter named Terry Uyarak. Using archival footage there from the National Film Board, that was Terry Uyarak from Igloolik with his moving song Aniksatwinarit, featuring fellow Nunavut musician Becky Hahn. Now, the title of that song translates to Just Breathe. It was written by Terry and his wife Tanya, and it goes out to anyone who is going through a tough time right now. Now, Terry Uyarak is no stranger to the stage. He has toured the world as a juggler and a musician in Art Cirque, the only Inuit circus troupe on the planet. And earlier this year, before the shutdown, Terry co-directed and performed in another touring Northern culture show called Unikatuak, meaning the old stories. This year, Terry Uyarak will be releasing his debut solo album, and the title translates somewhat fittingly to Before the World Ends. And the record beautifully weaves together Northern storytelling, soundscape, melody, and pride to carry you on a journey to one end of the world anyway. Wow, that is beautiful. Real images of the North there, accompanying that very uplifting song. That is Terry Uyarak from Igloolik, Nunavut, with his tune Inuit Nunangat, or Inuit Land, wherever the Inuit people live in the circumpolar north. A love letter to the life and culture, with Northern Haze even getting a shout out in that song. And some have already suggested that that tune should be in consideration for the anthem of Nunavut. That is the first single from Terry's new album, and Inuit Nunangat by Terry Uyarak is the song that you need to add to your playlist for this week. I'm Grant Lawrence from CBC Music. Stay safe, stay warm, and I'll check in with you again next week.
Coming up, another little way that COVID has changed our lives. A closer look at the humble handshake. Welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, COVID-19 has changed our lives in so many ways, big and small, but even the small differences can be significant. Today, Yute Lee looks at the loss of the handshake.
This is Norway's Prime Minister Erna Solberg asking the country to stop shaking hands to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Makes sense. But as soon as she finishes her speech, what happens? She goes for the hand. Come on. And others have made this mistake too, like Angela Merkel and the Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte. Now, politicians contradicting themselves, not exactly a story, but I think there's something else going on here. I think there's a very good reason why we can't help but shake hands. During the pandemic, we've heard about the essentials, groceries, walking, tigers. I want to talk about everything else, what we've deemed the non-essentials. Okay, so we all get it. Handshakes are gross, and during these unprecedented times, not shaking hands is a very good idea. In fact, many have suggested that this pandemic might be the end, the death of the handshake. But I've noticed something. As we all decided to stop shaking hands, we've turned to alternatives, like the elbow bump or the Wuhan kick. We're not getting rid of the handshake, we're just replacing it. So to me, there's clearly a bigger reason behind the handshake. And that's what I want to understand. The why. Why do we shake hands? Well, it turns out that's a very complicated question. If you look into the history of the handshake, you'll find that nobody knows exactly where it came from. It just pops up here and there in different societies over thousands of years. Some historians believe that the handshake started as a gesture of peace. When you're shaking hands with someone, you're not trying to kill them. You can see that in this stone relief from almost 3,000 years ago, showing a handshake between the rulers of Assyria and Babylon. Notice that their hands are touching each other, not their swords. But for the followers of Mithras in ancient Rome, the handshake was an important ritual of initiation, which showed you belonged to their secret order. Hop over to medieval Norway, and the handshake, or hand fasting, was recognized in the law for closing sales contracts and oath-taking. Then fast forward to 17th century England, where the Quakers used the handshake as a friendly greeting, an act of defiance against more traditional hierarchical greetings like the bow, the hat tip, or the curtsy, which were expected at the time. All that messy history has left us today with a messy gesture. The handshake actually means a lot of different things. It depends on who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. When you walk across the stage at your graduation and shake your professor's hand, that's a different handshake to the one you give after coming to a business agreement. The casual handshake you give your friend means something very different than the much more formal handshake you might give at a job interview. It's like a body language chameleon. A version of the handshake exists for just about any social situation. And the handshake isn't just versatile, it clearly holds a lot of significance. It can be ceremonial and very symbolic. We expect our world leaders to do it, our athletes. It marks historic events, partnerships, peace, and way too many photo shoots. On the other hand, not shaking hands can have serious consequences. Refusing to shake hands has gotten people kicked out of the Olympics, denied French citizenship, even killed. Okay, I'm being dramatic, but the point is that this gesture has become intertwined in our history, society, and its values. But the handshake is far from perfect. In fact, it can be a little problematic. Handshakes can be minefields for awkwardness, confusion, whatever the heck this is, and judgment. A limp handshake tags you as unconfident, but too strong a handshake, and you're a manipulator. If your palms are sweaty, you're weak, mom spaghetti. The rules aren't clear either. How long do you hold a handshake for? And do you shake once, twice, or not at all? One thing for sure is that the stakes can be high. A study found that handshakes influence the outcomes of job interviews, and another study found that longer than expected handshakes could cause anxiety. The handshake is almost like a test, and as a result, many feel like they have to study and prepare for it. There are countless tutorials instructing how to give a proper handshake to make a great first impression or nail a job interview. But the handshake isn't even a great test. While many are convinced that handshakes can tell so much about a person, the research suggests that the only personality trait that you can accurately guess from a handshake is extroversion. Anything else is speculation. And the worst part is that it's not even fair. Research also shows that your handshake can be judged differently based on your gender and your race. I'll admit, I found this pretty frustrating. I mean, we have a complicated gesture that's supposed to say so much, but often leads us to misunderstand each other. And oh yeah, is spreading germs. Is all this messy, icky physical stuff all that necessary? Why can't we use, I don't know, our words? But for better or for worse, that's just not how the world works. In reality, we don't just listen to our words. We can't help it. When I meet you in person, I'm reading your face, your body language, noticing the tone of your voice, and even the silent pauses in our conversation. Humans are perceptive. In fact, it's estimated that words make up as little as 30% of our communication. The rest is everything else. But all that nonverbal communication is very complex and inconsistent. I tried looking into this. There are fields of study dedicated to body language, touch, eye movement, proximity, tone of voice, even timing. And these expressions vary by person, by culture, by gender, by so many different things. For me, it was borderline overwhelming. I think something like the handshake is one of our attempts to standardize and simplify our nonverbal communication. A slightly less messy gesture to contend with our very, very complex ways of communicating with each other, to show that we want a good relationship, with trust, respect, maybe even friendship. Is it perfect? Of course not, but without it, I think we'd be left with more confusion, not less. During this pandemic, we're reconsidering a lot of things, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater here. We very well could get rid of the handshake, but we can't get rid of the reason why the handshake exists. We can't erase the handshake, we can only replace it. And that replacement will have some pretty big shoes to fill.
When you are near me and touch my hand,
Coming up, millions of trees don't just plant themselves. Stay with us for a sample of a new documentary about BC tree planters. Hello and welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Well, from logging to milling, machines now do a lot of the tough work that people used to do by hand. But one thing that hasn't changed much is tree planting. 1 million trees is a new CBC TV documentary about the people that do it.
My mom actually said to me, you know that tree planting is all like sex and drugs and partying. And I was like, yeah, sign me up, because I was 20.
We are digging holes inside the earth. Yeah, we are. Eventually we'll ask, what was it worth? Oh, you get your salary tomorrow, but work for it today. And you know that us humans won't delay.
This would be a pretty bad day for sure. Days like this where pretty much you wake up in the rain and it just rains nonstop.
And there's that point you reach where you genuinely love the act of tree planting.
You know, being efficient and being physically fit are really important things, but being able to actually be in control of your thoughts and emotions, that's the hardest part of tree planting.
Border town sitting in a mountain view. Everyone come down from the park is true. Think it just take the truck for a drive today. And every time I pass, I'll see the way. Every time I pass, I'll see the waste.
And you can watch 1 Million Trees now on CBC Gem. Now, every Remembrance Day, we pay homage to the many men and women who gave their lives in combat. But in this week's look into our archives, we remember 2 war vets who died during a training exercise in BC. Terry Milewski brought us that story.
You could live through a lifetime of wartime remembrances and never see one quite like this.
They lost their lives while in the service of their country and ours.
Presiding in the rainforest is British Columbia's Lieutenant Governor, her elegant shoes planted in the mud. Around her, amid the logs and ferns, a small band of veterans ponders the rusting hulk of a wartime DC-3 and the fate of the British pilots who crashed here on a training exercise back in 1944.
At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
It's a strange story. Strange because it's taken 58 years to set up a memorial for the 2 pilots who ran out of fuel in bad weather near Port Hardy at the northern tip of Vancouver Island. Only the gunner survived the crash, and as the war in Europe drew to a close, the 2 pilots were buried with little notice in Victoria, not as heroes who fell in combat, but as victims of an accident. And somehow that wasn't good enough for veterans like Lou Lepine. He thought they took the same risks and paid the same price as their buddies in combat.
Dead is dead, whether it's flying on operations or training exercises like this. So we must recognize the valor of these young men who flew and defended our way of life.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land.
Lepine set out to rally his fellow veterans to organize this ceremony in the woods. But it wasn't easy. After so long, the old plane was inaccessible and overgrown.
It was eerie, spooky. The moss was hanging down, very little light, wet and soggy. And there was the old girl sitting there, just forgotten. Well, she's not forgotten now.
Not forgotten. It's the plane as much as the pilots that brings back memories for many Air Force vets. Few can forget the long service of the DC-3, a workhorse which inspired loyalty both in war and peace. But what about the pilots? In this case, the trail's gone cold after so long, and little is known of J.M. Talbot and T.S. Wardlow. They just vanished into the statistics until now.
And we know that because of today, their sacrifice will be continued to be remembered where brave people meet and consider the power of service and duty and discipline in the service of one's country.
God save our gracious Queen.
For these veterans, then, you don't get forgotten just because you didn't die in battle. So this remembrance in the rainforest finally went ahead, even if it was 58 years late. Terry Milewski, CBC News, Vancouver.
Ben Nelms is CBC Vancouver's award-winning staff photographer, and here are some of the best images that he shared with us this week. And that's all for Our Vancouver for this week. I hope you can join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. Goodbye for now.